together we lead our Narrative Change Project, where we share stories. Oops, you can't see me, sorry. Here I am. We share stories, we craft experiences, and we really talk about some of the inequity that happens here in our city. We're really here to ask better questions of ourselves and each other. The one question that we are constantly asking here is, who's my neighbor? And today we're going to be learning a little bit more about the work of our neighbors. And Patton, I'm planning to turn this over to you. Can you just tell us a little bit more about our guest today and why we're here?
Sure. Hey, everybody. Excited to have this conversation with the guys from the San Antonio Fatherhood Campaign. Again, my name is Patton Dodd, and I work with Zachary and Jessica and other people on our great team here at the H.E. Budd Foundation on what we call the Narrative Change Project. And today, we get to spend some time with Ramon Vasquez and Greg Marshall from the San Antonio Fatherhood Campaign. Ramon and Greg, why don't each of you tell us, I just said your name, tell us your name again, your title, and also just give us a little bit of how you spent Father's Day yesterday, and then I'll go into a fuller introduction after that. So Ramon, how about you?
Sure. Good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation. And yeah, my name is Ramon Juan Vasquez. I'm the son of Ramon Vasquez y Sanchez and Gloria Camarillo. I'm the executive director of the American Indians in Texas. I've been in this position since 1998. And Father's Day was a blast. It's every year I have a good Father's Day. So yesterday I had breakfast with my dad, who's 81, and then spent the rest of the evening with my children and my grandson.
Awesome. Thanks, Ramon. How about you, Greg?
So my name is Gregory Joseph Marshall Jr. I was named after my father, Gregory Sr. So I am the program director for the San Antonio Fatherhood Campaign. That is one of many programs under the American Indians in Texas at the Spanish Colonial Mission. It's my honor to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me and Ramon. We're looking forward to today's show. So I had the pleasure after the Father's Day Fiesta the day before, which is our live virtual event, spending the breakfast with a friend of mine and her family, and then, really spending the rest of the day with my kids, right? Barbecuing, eating, and then we made it to the pool, and it was just a fun, exciting day.
Cool. So we've been getting to know Ramon in particular and AIT-SCM, American Indians in Texas, Spanish Colonial Missions. Over the last year or so, Ramon and I have spent some time together. Our teams have spent some time together learning about the work that they do. And a couple months ago, we decided to do a profile of Ramon and the work of AIT, thinking that we'd be writing about the work that they do to kind of elevate and educate about the indigenous peoples who live and continue to live around the historic colonial missions. And as I got to know AIT, as I got to know about all that they do, which is a whole range of wellness for families of children in San Antonio, I learned that at least half their staff, a significant part of their work, is within what's called the San Antonio Fatherhood Campaign. And I have to admit that and I've told this to Ramon and Greg, I was a little reticent to follow that lead. They talk a lot about the work they do with fathers and with what they call male involvement, which you'll be hearing about. I was reluctant to, even though I knew this is kind of becoming clear to me as a kind of a reporter, this is a really core part of their work. I didn't really want to follow those leads. And in the last couple of months, I've had to do my own kind of self-work and investigating what am I hesitant about here. Talking about fatherhood, even celebrating Father's Day is something that has always been a struggle for me. I've just been reticent to talk much about fatherhood. I grew up with a really troubled father. And so I had a really negative association with fathers most of my life. Grew up angry and hurt with him. And then I was in my mid-20s, I became involved with a lot of like evangelical Christian organizations during and after college, where talking about fathers was always associated. There was a lot of like fatherhood ministry, but it always felt macho to me. It didn't feel like, it was like, we always like would watch Braveheart, talk about Braveheart and like try to combine Braveheart with the Bible. And I don't know, just always, it drove me crazy. I didn't trust any of it. And then I tried to find some father figures, again, in my 20s and early 30s. I had 2 or 3 pretty key father figures in my life, and they also turned out to be not great guys. And so I just felt like I had one kind of negative experience with father figures, with my own dad, over the course of my life. And so for, I don't know, 20 years, I just kind of have avoided talk about fatherhood. I've become a father, and I think the experience of raising my own kids has helped heal my father's heart, because now I've learned, I think, how to be a father and the importance of dads. But I've always been slightly triggered whenever I hear people just talking a lot about fatherhood, the importance of fathers and families, because I've associated it with, again, macho-ness, but also negative experiences that I've had. So in the last 2 months, I've had a big change of heart where all this is concerned, and getting to know Ramon and Greg and other people at the San Antonio Fatherhood Campaign. And I see now the beauty and power, the potential of focusing on men in particular and trying to heal men in particular. And that's what we're going to be hearing about and talking about today. 1 in 4 children in our country are growing up without a father in the home. And Ramon calls this a public health crisis. And you're going to hear why. What these guys do is a lot of things, but generally speaking, they work with men in order to bring healing to families and whole communities. They focus on men, again, in order to bring healing to whole communities. A lot of the men who come into the San Antonio Fatherhood Campaign are there because, frankly, they've been ordered to be there or mandated to be there by a judge. These are men who are caught up in the judicial system, perhaps, for one reason or another, and they've come to a place where a judge has told them that they need to go to the San Antonio Fatherhood Campaign for a workshop or a class or some mentoring. The work that these guys do is, I think it's unusual, it's hard, it's fascinating. I've loved learning about it, and I see now that these guys are experts at them, Ramon and Greg and the other people that they work with. And this is work they have deep experience here. The San Antonio Fatherhood Campaign is nearly 20 years old. It's really distinct work in San Antonio. It's very rare. There's very little male-focused work happening in our city and across the country. And so it makes what they do even more exceptional. I think it's pioneering work in a lot of ways. So today, I hope that we're going to give you a taste of what I've been able to do, which is go through this learning journey of restoring, even just my own thinking about fatherhood and the importance of fathers as we get to know these guys and the work that they do. So Ramon and Greg, first, I want us to get a little taste of how your work actually happens and what it feels like. Every week, San Antonio Fatherhood Campaign leaders gather with dozens and dozens, hundreds of men really over the course of multiple meetings. And I want us all who are in this call today to begin by kind of imagining that we're one of those guys who has shown up for the first time to a workshop or a mentoring session, a circle with the San Antonio Fatherhood Campaign. And imagine that you've been ordered to be there. You wouldn't choose to be there necessarily, but you've been told to go by a judge, and you have to. And you show up and you're not sure that you belong, that this is going to be right for you. You might be intimidated by the other guys that are in this room or on this call. And I've talked to San Antonio Fatherhood clients who are like, the guys on this call are rougher than I think I am, and they're tougher than I think I am, and I don't think I want to be here in the first place. And so you're bringing all that with you into these calls. So imagine that you're finding yourself in one of these rooms, reluctant to be there. And Greg, why don't you tell us, how do you begin such a meeting?
So I think that's a great question. Before I do that, I just want to let everybody know that I was actually a client before I started working here. So I sat in that meeting and I remember those feelings, right? So how do we begin our program, right? So it really is about creating a group that's friendly, right? There's accountability, but it's friendly and it's opening, it's re-inviting. So it really kind of starts defining this village, right? A village of men that are gathered as we take this journey to be better. It doesn't mean that we're bad. It's just we're looking to sharpen some skills, some tools. But we want to make it really open and friendly. We do that with these icebreakers, right? We might have the group to go around and kind of give us a high point or a low point of their week. Or what we're going to do today is just think, just take a couple seconds and think about it. If you had an animal that represented you and your personality, who would that animal be? And what I want you guys to do is I want you to write it in the chat. I can see it. So I want to see the animal that represents you, right? And sometimes I look at myself and I say, I feel like this red hawk, right? And because I'm always kind of like floating around, and then I go in and I visit with my kids, and then I go and see a team member, or I go and visit a class. And it's just this freeness and freedom and being able to fly, but then also touch the ground. So I want to see your animal torso, I want to see what animal, grizzly bear. Come on. I want to see more, right? A golden retriever, the deep. And if you can, why? What is it about that animal that really connects you with you, right? A lion, a wolf. Why are you a grizzly bear? Why are you a tortoise? Now I'm going to turn it over to my boss, Ramon, and I'm going to ask him this question. What animal are you, Ramon, and why?
Yeah, so I associate myself with a jaguar, right? So I'm really elaborate with my little jaguar. But just moving through this exercise, one of the things that we want to do is we want to help men. We're storytellers, right? And that's how we move through our lives, right? Building our stories one experience at a time. And we have to walk in balance. And this exercise helps us understand and reflect, how others are seeing us and how we see ourselves. And we want to be that mirror. We want to be that mirror to our children. We want to be that mirror to our significant others, to our family, to our friends, and to our community. And so we ask people to take this opportunity and just reflect on those characteristics. I don't think anybody chose to be a skunk, but sometimes we have skunks out there. We have skunks out there. And they might not see themselves as skunks, or maybe they do, and they're just too ashamed, or maybe their own experiences has taken them in a whole different direction, with alcohol and substance abuse, domestic violence issues, child abuse. So anyway, that's kind of a little icebreaker there, Patton, that we walk the people through. There's a lot more that goes into this, but for the sake of time, that's
it. And then
we share with
I'll reach
people.
some more, and I'll say, yeah, well, you should reach about Brianna.
Thanks, Ramon. Thanks, Greg. Yeah, I can definitely, I've loved hearing about the different kind of tools that you guys use to kind of warm people up and to get people to, I don't know, thaw out a little bit when they show up and where they're asked to share themselves. Ramon, I wonder if you could just give us a 1-minute overview of the San Antonio Fatherhood Campaign. When did it start, and what's the mission of SAFC?
Yeah, so basically the San Antonio Fatherhood Campaign started in 2003 with the help of the Annie Casey Foundation. We were working on an initiative here together as partners with called Making Connections. And at that time, we had several young children being killed or hurt at the hands of young fathers or the boyfriends of young mothers. And I don't know if people remember baby Giovanni. And it was during that time when a group of men got together and said, you know what? We have wounded men out there. We have wounded men out there, and we have children and women being hurt. And we got to stand up. And but we also realized that many of the perpetrators, many of these men, these males, these young boys or men, were probably victims of some type of violence or act against them when they were younger, and that perpetrator probably looked like me, or the other men that were with us. You know, we were that it was gonna, because we looked like those men. It was going to take men like us to stand up and say, you know what, it doesn't have to be this way. We have to break these stereotypes and false myths that are rooted in machismo and redefine it. So we were grateful to the Annie Casey Foundation. They provided the first seed money for the San Antonio Fatherhood Campaign. We're tied to a national organization called the National Compadres Network. So we're part of a national movement. One of the founders is here locally in San Antonio, and we are the regional reps for this work as well for Texas. So, you know, the mission is, you know, we want to build healthier families, stronger families. One of the things I tell the staff and other people is that don't confuse the work that we do with male advocacy. We are not a male advocacy organization, right? What we promote are healthy and strong families. We happen to focus on the fathers because we believe that fatherhood is sacred. And so that's where we want to channel our energies. And because if we were at the root, if males were at the root of all the social ills that our communities are struggling through, that are, you know, disadvantaged communities, then why wouldn't we want to invest our time and our resources up front than see ourselves, our men, you know, end up in a pipeline that ends up in prison, or jail.
Yeah.
And so that's what, you know, that was the whole reason that we wanted, you know, we were already, you know, child abuse rates are out of control. Yeah. And, you know, high maternal mortality rates are out of control. And so
what has the work looked like over the years? Just practically speaking, what are the different interventions that you guys have developed?
What are the different what? I'm sorry.
Interventions that you guys have developed. How do you serve men?
Yeah, so we've had to do anger management, parenting classes. You know, we have different, and they're all culturally rooted in culture, right? And so, like we have one curriculum that we use, Raising Children with Pride, which is a fatherhood curriculum. We've had to create strategic partnerships in school districts so that we can get in early and work with young dads. Unfortunately, we aren't always able to reach all of those dads, but we've also, the domestic violence classes that we have now, we do classes for both victims and perpetrators. We work really closely with the court system and of course the Child Protective Services. And that keeps us busy. That keeps us really busy.
And then one-on-one mentoring as well.
Yeah. So what we do is a lot of coaching. You know, we want to do life coaching and mentoring, because even a lot of people think about mentoring as like adult to youth. But the reality is a lot of our men need mentoring by other men. Yeah. You know, when we have elder men right now who are just coming to grips with their own pain, and you have men out there that are wounded, how do we ever expect our boys to heal? And if that's the main goal, is to have young boys heal, then we need to start working with our wounded men.
Yeah. You know, I think it'd be helpful to think kind of broadly and socially, or maybe systematically, a couple of moments. The challenges that you've named so far, you know, boys becoming fathers perhaps before they're ready to do so, men leaving or almost leaving their families, certainly cycles of abuse, various kinds of abuse in the home. These challenges don't arise out of nowhere, right? How was our system designed to hurt to hurt men and to decrease male involvement in families and communities?
Yeah, you know, when you so we have several different things. You know, we have failed governmental policies that we're dealing with a generation that have been impacted by failed governmental policies. You know, there was
like what? Like, give us an example of a policy.
Yeah. So, for example, you know, if you needed federal assistance for food stamps or WIC the father could not be in the home. If not, you were not going to be eligible to receive any of these assistance. So you had children that grew up being told by their mothers, don't say nothing, don't tell them your father's here, because we won't be able to get anything. So imagine that. Imagine being a child having to hear that, having to lie to somebody saying, no, my daddy's not here. Or a man being forced out of a house because, look, you know, you're threatening our livelihood. If you can't go get a job, you got to go. And then, of course, you know, if you were a service provider and if you were trying to receive family planning dollars, in order for you to receive family planning dollars, you could not work with dads. That's not factored into that equation.
Wow, that's another. Both the technicalities in both those things. Can you explain a little bit more? When
Well,
you know,
I think
we're not allowed to be in the home in order to get the funds, or the service provider can work with that. What does that mean?
Well, think about it. I mean, service providers that want to. So you have service providers out there working with with mothers, right, and children, but could not service the dad, could not help the fathers in this situation because they would lose their funding if they did, or they wanted to do it, they would have to pay it out of their own resources. You know, luckily we've made some changes at the national level where Office of Family Planning should include fathers, right? But still, that created sites that were not father friendly. And people ask me, what do you mean father friendly? What is there such a thing? Of course there is. Fathers have gotten used to not being included when you talk about family planning. You know, oh, you got to go see the social worker. Well, then I'll drop you off and I'll wait in the car.
Yeah. Wow.
So, you know, I mean, you know, then of course it creates policies, and the other agency that creates policies around these same systems, you know, like zero tolerance. Now you have children being put through the pipelines to prison systems, and how do you recoup from that?
Yeah.
You know, we know, you know, like, you know, so when you have a young boy growing up, you know, and he's fatherless, he's fatherless, and now he's just turning to that age. He's turning 13, 14. He's becoming, you know, he's into that manhood, the rites of passage, but he's learned not to trust himself because all he knows is all the negative and all the other experiences that the other men around his life has shown him. And if it's been negative, that's all he knows.
Yeah.
And if the mother was a victim and had some traumatic experiences with that husband, with the father, then he's just become everything that caused that pain against her.
Mm-hmm.
And so he learns not to trust himself. And so what happens? He turns to areas of comfort, and more than likely that area is not in the home. And we'll talk about that a little bit more too, about you know, that village concept, Penn.
Okay, that's great. That's helpful. Thank you, Ramon. You mentioned machismo a few minutes ago. Can you tell us about that? What is machismo, and what role does it play in the problems that you're talking about?
Well, you know, I mean, that's kind of just, it's embedded in our communities. It's ingrained in our men, many of our men. And it's unfortunate, but you know, it's a relatively new concept. I mean, it was a concept that was brought to this area from other parts of the world, and you know, especially Spanish. But you know, if you look at some of the indigenous and the historical ancestral teachings of manhood, they begin with understanding and respect for children and women, and that's the tenet, right? Historically. But then when you start introducing the issue of machismo just means male, right? When it's literally translated, but it has so many other connotations now. And so what we've done, people attribute, you know, if you're gonna be macho, you have to be violent. If you're gonna be macho, then the woman tell the woman what to do. If you have to be macho, your child doesn't cry. Your boy doesn't play with dolls. He's a macho, right? So what we've done is, because we know that that's false. We know, those of us who have been working in this field for over 20 something years, we know that it doesn't have to be that way. And many of our young men that hear our stories and hear us talk, they finally feel like they've gotten the permission from another man telling them that it doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to do that. So what we've done is we've totally tried, over the years, we've been working on redefining macho. So for us, this is what macho stands for. Macho means, the M stands for maestro. You're a teacher. The A stands for amable. You're caring. The C stands for cariñoso. You're affectionate. And the H is honesto, which means you're honest, you're honest, you're an honest man. And the O is orgulloso de ser padre, proud to be a father. And those are our new tenets, our redefined tenets for macho. And that's what we share with our clients and the men that we work with. The biggest issue is that we're all born male. Those of us that are male, we're born male, but we're not all born men. We help men, young boys, understand the difference between maleness and manhood.
Wow. Can you give us an example of how you take a tough young man, especially who's got maybe a really rigid exterior, who's only seen and has therefore modeled machismo? How do you get him to that place where he can redefine macho? Give us an example of
Well,
how
the first thing you have to realize is where this young man is coming from. And most of our young men that are deep in this have already disconnected from community. They've already had so many traumatic or letdowns in their lives that they've totally disconnected. And so you have to, you can't address these issues like a father. You have to first understand that this boy, he's probably never been called son. He's probably never felt the warmth of a man's hands on his face, other than the cold hand of a striking man's hand, right? So you have to break down those barriers and then build those authentic relationships, because all they want to do is trust somebody. Can I trust you? Because then we're going to get into the work. Well, why can't you cry? Why do you have to hit a woman? If you really love her, the only way you can really love someone and beat them is that you turn them into an object, like a wall or a filing cabinet. That's not love. So you have to emulate in your own life what you're explaining and working with this other person, because they're watching and they're paying attention and they want to know that you're doing the same thing that you're telling him to do.
Wow. Yeah, that's really powerful. And thank you, Greg, for putting that JPEG of the acronym in the chat. Go ahead, Greg.
So Patton, when we step back, right? And our gangs have figured this out. In our neighborhood, the gangs have figured this out. They have figured out how to connect with our youth in such a way to say, I see you, I hear you, and I have your back. And what we're redefining is the men in our community looking to our youth and each other and saying that, I see you, I hear you, and I have your back. That community, that village, right? Because we got to protect our youth, but it has to start with the men. The men have to stand up, they have to show up, and they got to speak up. The elders have to reach and start telling the grandson stories. That adult has got to start talking to his kids. We talk about spending 20 minutes a day talking to your kids, telling them stories so you can start having your kids tell you stories, right? To become those storytellers. Yeah. We have to reconnect the disconnected. And we do that with our culture. We do that with our stories. We do this with the work that we do.
Yeah, you just reminded me, one of the men I talked to was talking to me about this 20-minute rule. What's it called? Is it called 120 or something like that?
Yeah, 120, the 120 rule. So it's 3 pieces, right? 20 minutes a day we spend in self-reflection, because we have to know ourselves. Before I can share my love, I got to feel my love. Before I can share my trauma, I got to heal my trauma. But 20 minutes a day in self-reflection, 20 minutes a day creating conversations and storytelling with our kids. We say, if you don't have a story, that's fine, read to them. And then ask them to read to you when they get older. We start talking about working with dads that have babies and mom bellies and say, tell them stories. Start right now. Don't wait. When that baby's just born, start telling them stories. Or her, a year, 2 years old, continue to tell those stories, right? My son, he's 17, he gets in my car after school, he shuts off my radio and he says to me, Dad, you want to hear my story for the day? And that's the community that we're creating. And then 20 minutes a day of telling stories to other adults. So it's cultivating the relationship we might have with mother or with our parents or with our uncles of relation or honor, right? That we have to be connected to ourselves, to our kids, and those around us.
I really like the practical like expressions of the work you guys do. Some of the exercises, even like, you know, having us name our animal, or one of them that I talked to was telling me like I was hearing these principles, didn't quite know how to translate it into my own life, and this 20 minutes a day rule, it gave me something to do. It was very practical. It was a tool that I could use, and then I was surprised. He told me I was surprised at the way it grew my own capacity for being in my home and talking to the people that I live with, my family members. Greg, I'm wondering if you would mind telling us a little bit more about, you mentioned that you were a client of the Fatherhood Campaign before you became program director. And I'm wondering about what perceptions of maleness or manhood did you bring with you when you first started, and how did your own views shift?
So when I was growing up, my father was an alcoholic. He was one of these happy-go-lucky guys who went to work every day, but he drank every day. So he's very disconnected from our families, right? And I asked him years, because when I was 15, he quit drinking and he started attending meetings. And he maintained his sobriety for like 20 plus years until the day he passed.
Wow.
And I remember having lots of conversations after we got through our woundedness in regards to, why did you stop drinking? And he said, I realized I was a stranger in my own house, that I didn't know your mother, my wife. I didn't know you. I didn't know your sister or your brother. And that really, you guys knew each other. You were a family. And I was that stranger. And it was that pain, that bottom that he hit that drove him to change and to become a healer. And he taught me how to be a healer. So when I came to the campaign, I had some of that experience. I did some of that work with my parents, but I didn't realize to what extent my woundedness was also presenting itself as being a father, right? Because I found myself at times being distant when I needed to ask for that story or tell a story, right? So when I came to the campaign, I was wounded myself. I'd been separated from my family. It would be a year and a half before I would be reunited. We were going through a nasty divorce with my wife at the time. But the campaign, and I was getting service from the women's battered shelter. They were amazing. But they said, go over to the campaign. Here's some guys that really can help. And I connected, and I was disconnected. And I started redefining some of this. And instead of meeting with other people in the community, I started focusing in on my kids. I went to court, I got the court order, went to the state of Michigan, picked up my children with the assistance of the state police, brought them back, and I've been a single father since, right? And every day, my goal is to connect with my kids, to teach them how to be a healer. And I can tell you, my sons, my daughter, they're not wounded like I was growing up in an alcoholic family. We all suffer woundedness. And what do we do with that, right? Some girl breaks my heart, some boy breaks my heart. How do I heal that? How do I reach out to the community when I'm wounded and I pull people, the circle of care that we talk about in our class, and I pull people close to me, right? My daughter was becoming a woman, and I had to reach out to our circle of support because their mother's not here right now. And I had to reach out to them, and I said to these women, will you help my daughter define her womanness? Because there's some conversations I can't have with her, especially when it comes to like her moon cycle. And they did. They loved my child. That village loved my little daughter at that point, as I maintained my role as a father and a figure in their lives.
Mm. You just said something that reminded me of a question that I was planning on asking at the end, but let's get to it now. A lot of the men that you're dealing with have already left the home where their children are being raised, or perhaps they've been removed from the home where their children are being raised. And I know you care for those men, but you're also trying to treat the whole family. So what can you do for those fatherless families? And what can you do for the mothers who may still be at home with the kids, and the women who are becoming mothers in the communities that you guys work in? What does the fatherhood have to do with the whole
So
family?
I think that's a very powerful message that we need to reach into the community, right? Because it's this village, right? And I would tell to these moms, to these aunts and these grandmothers raising these boys, that you don't have to do it alone. I would say that to a single parent, any kind of single parent, father or mother, we don't have to do it alone. That there are a group of good men that are happy to sit and talk with your nephew or your son and help them understand what it really means to be a man. Not the machismo, but a man of honor, a man who cares, a man who's kind and gentle, right? We can have balance in this. We can be respectful. We can have accountability, but we can be gentle and kind too, right? So I think it's really important. And then in a way, right, we open this way that if that father shows up, if that dad comes knocking, that we present a way for him to reunite with the family, but through the campaign, let us work with him a little bit. Let us, soften and create and redefine healthy roles that he can play, right? A healthy role model. And what does that mean? To be a man of my word, reject any form of abuse, take responsibility, and realize I'm this role model for my son, right? And how do I, through kindness and being gentle, give mom that opportunity to heal, give that son that opportunity to heal, right? So when they're ready, you're there, and you have to wait for them to come. You need to let them know that you're there, but you have to wait, right? Because they have to heal. If not, we're being that hurricane in people's lives again, and we don't want to do that.
One of the things that happens to me whenever I talk to you guys about this work is that I get this image in my head of, I think this is the surprising thing to me that I've learned really over the course of talking to y'all, is that my kind of default image for any work related to fatherhood or fatherhood ministry would be individual dads, and then perhaps individual families, like nuclear families, households. You guys are not just talking about individual dads and individual households. The one family is important, but you have a community vision, a village vision. It seems to me that you are, is it true to say that you are trying to create men because of the role they play in the whole community that they live in, and not just in their individual families? Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct, because we believe that, that life is sacred, right? I mean, and we have a very powerful, we all have powerful roles that we have to play, I mean, and then when fathers disconnect and we have to help them, we have to remind them, look, man, who do you think the first man a woman falls in love with? And that's her dad. And there's reasons for that. I didn't make that up, right? We've heard this, right? They're good, that young women tend to find men or search out men that are have characteristics of their father. So I mean, I didn't make that up. That's that's information that's out there. And so when we share that with men, it's like, well, what kind of man are you choosing to be? You can choose somebody who's worked towards healing, or you can continue to be destructive, right? And it takes other men. It takes other men to stand up and say, no, it's not going to happen like that.
Yeah.
Domestic violence is rampant in our communities, right? And that's not bound by color or economic disadvantages or anything like that. But the problem is that's the best kept secret in families, right? I mean, we don't talk about that.
Yeah.
And what we do is we say, no, you got to talk about that. We need to talk about that. We need to bring it out. You need to say something, because that's part about the teachings of manhood, is that we don't stay silent. We can't stay silent. And so we have to change the whole culture of a community that says, no, we don't stand silent. We won't stand for this. And I tell our staff, is that, you just keep doing the work that you're doing. Hopefully we want to work ourselves out of a job. But your report card will not come in until you see the children of the men that you're working with and how they are. And that's how well you did. So don't be in a hurry to have a scorecard. We didn't get here overnight.
Wow. So yeah, it takes a long time. It takes a generation at least to measure the impact of the work you guys are doing. I have a couple more questions for you. I want to invite everyone who's listening to formulate your own questions. You can drop them in the chat if you'd like to, or I'll turn it over to you here in a few minutes and we'll finish our time with Ramon and Greg with some broader conversation. But a couple more questions. You're mostly, I know your work kind of, it scales the county, at least the city of San Antonio. And I know I know it's also true that you're mostly working with fathers who live in neighborhoods that have been at a disadvantage historically, neighborhoods that don't have the same resources that exist in other parts of town. How do the economic conditions of these neighborhoods impact families and fathers?
Go ahead, Greg. You take that one.
So I think it's a great question, right? I mean, if I have to go and work 2 or 3 jobs, I don't have time and I'm burnt out and I'm tired, right? If I have been previously incarcerated, and we work with families that have 7 generations of men being incarcerated, father and son, 7 generations back, right? So these challenges, because if you can't find that job, and if you have to go to work immediately because your family needs food on the table, or they need help paying the electric or paying the rent. So we have boys that come to us at 12 saying, I need to find a job because I'm tired of my mother working 3 of them, right? These are the challenges this family faced. Refrigerators filled with cockroaches, right? Stealing power from families next door because they haven't paid their bill, right? They're in survival mode from almost the beginning. And we, who might have had it a little different, say, oh, all you have to do is what? I need to make it through today.
Mm-hmm.
They understand that picture better than we can ever paint it, right? Because that's what they live. So in a very gentle way, we start with, I see you, I hear you, and I have your back. And creating that relationship is critical, because they gotta, like Ramon said, they want to have people around them they feel like they can trust, that they can respect, and they can look up to. It's in our nature, it's in our DNA, and we create that village for them to reconnect, right? So hopefully they decide that they want to go get a job. We had one person, we give away 350,000 diapers a year. We had one person save all that money they would have went and spent on diapers, and they were able to go buy a car, right? $500 car. But for them, with 3 kids, it made a whole difference in the world, because I don't have to take my 3 kids onto the bus and be on the bus or two or three with 3 kids, right? These are the conditions our families struggle with. Man gets in prison for 10, 15 years, and where does he go when he gets out? Right back to the neighborhood. He's been reprogrammed. I mean, we need to work with that man so he understands what it means to be back into the neighborhood and that the kids see, right? Or we have a gentleman, who's like, I did a stupid thing when I was 18 years old. I got caught smoking weed. They threw me in jail for 90 days. And now I'm in my 40s and I can't go to my son's school and volunteer because I got a criminal background. And we keep creating this disconnection. And if we're going to heal our kids, we need to start looking at how do we unite? How do we create that gentle, kind call to the men? I truly believe there's lots of men that want to get involved. They want to be a mentor. They want to give back. And they might never have needed the campaign, but they don't know about us. They don't know about the way we would invite them to get involved.
Yeah.
So from that woman who is incarcerated to that person who never needed it, our boys, our girls, they need all of us. They unite.
Yeah, thank you, Greg. Ramon, did you have something before I
just wanted to say, 67% of the men that come into our to receive services have been adjudicated in one way or another. So you can imagine what comes with that, right? Child support issues. And one of the things that we work towards with the campaign is that you have to be 100% child support compliant, right? 100%.
Oh, wow.
And moving towards it, or on point, right? And so what some of our staff, especially Frank Castro, who's worked really hard, with the campaign since the beginning, what he was able to do and help other staff learn how to do is to help educate these men to understand the difference between child support and supporting your child. It's a philosophical, change that has to happen within the male mind. And you actually have to help them see the difference, to break it down differently, so that they can take pride in paying that child support.
Yeah.
Now it means something different than, I'm going to give her money so she can go out and party or do whatever she. No, that's,
Right.
Get that out of your mind, man. Forget that.
Yeah.
That's a lot of the work that internal work that we do as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you. I mentioned at the top of our time today that this work is under the umbrella of American Indians in Texas at the Spanish Colonial Missions. When I first started talking to you guys, Fatherhood Campaign and AIT seem like apples and oranges. I know now that it's not, but could you explain for us, how is the San Antonio Fatherhood Campaign, how does it fit under AIT? How is this an expression of the mission and the work of the American Indians in Texas?
So, we believe that all life is sacred, right? And that, and then, how it started off too was a couple of us were single dads. At the very beginning, I was a single dad at 27 years old. I didn't know what to do. I was raising a daughter. She was 5 years old. Or she was 3 years old, and my youngest son was 1.
Wow.
And so I was walking through it, not knowing what do I do with my daughter. I don't know how to braid hair. She wants braids. So there was, and we didn't have changing tables in male and men bathrooms then. We had to advocate for that too.
Wow.
And so, it just, at some point we all realized that the American Indians in Texas, we realized that, what, all life is sacred. And there's so much that we can teach our young males, in terms of sacredness. Because we don't use that word enough. We don't understand, we've lost everything that's sacred, in some of our families, and it was time that we kind of brought that back. And we just felt like, through our community outreach programming, that would be one staple that we will continue to push. And fortunately, like I said, the Annie Casey Foundation saw the vision and invested in it. And here we are today, still providing the same services to over, 4,000 people a year just through that service. And, one of the highest diaper bank supporters there is, in San Antonio. And so it's amazing work. It's well needed. We've had, when we first started, the women would come up to us and we want something like that for us. Well, now over 40% of the women, over 40% of the clients that come in through our door are females.
Wow.
And they're coming through the door because they want something for their father. They want something for their son. They need something for their husband, their boyfriend, their nephew, their brother. And we're an option.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. Thank you. And if you guys are not familiar with AIT, it's worth getting to know AIT. They're doing invaluable work in San Antonio in a variety of ways, and you're going to have an opportunity to learn more about AIT proper next Monday. We'll talk about this a little bit again at the end of our time today, but we're going to invite you all to a walking tour of the missions with Ramon and some of the other AIT folks, and it's really powerful. And if you've never done that before, you're going to want to do it. So I'd love to get to a couple questions in the chat, starting with you, Mitchell Moore. Pastor Mitchell, would you mind just unmuting yourself and letting you hear your question directly?
Absolutely. First of all, I want to thank you all. This has been tremendously helpful. I'm grateful to hear about the work that you do, the intentionality and the focus that you have. My question is, do you all have any specific tools that you use for fathers who have failed as fathers, who want to try to redeem and restore relationship, and particularly dealing with the shame in their hearts and strengthen and empowering hope for them moving forward?
Yeah.
Yes.
Go ahead, Greg.
So really our program is broken up into three things, right? We do education to kind of give you guys an idea, different things that we can do. The mentoring and the circles, right? Our sequels. So, being able to work with somebody one-on-one, and we do almost 600 hours a month of mentoring with clients, right? So it's that brotherhood that we're really reinstituting, because if we're going to heal shame, at some point we have to get really vulnerable, right? And we get vulnerable with our mentor, right? And then we were supported through groups. So our circles are, there's support groups, and it's talking about our gifts and our baggage and acknowledging the shame and the vulnerability, but also that encouragement that as long as we're alive, it's never too late. It's never too late to heal. It's never too late to mend relationships. It's never too late to change.
It just to be a little more specific and practical about it. Let's say someone like Mitchell has a dad who he knows is, wrestling with deep shame. Can he send people your way? Can they get on your circles, immediately? How does it work?
So they would call our hotline, 210-227-3463. They would be connected to somebody immediately. We would ask them to do an online application. From there, we're going to sit down with them. A lot of it's virtual. We're phasing into online or in-person stuff. So a lot of it's still virtual, but they would have a conversation with one of our mentors, our support mentors, right? And align them with the proper services. So they're going to spend a little bit of time with me, and they can do it on the grandfather's behalf or their father's behalf, and then say, can we have a conversation together, right? We've had women bring their sons in. They visit with us first, very clearly. We're talking about what's going on. Then we create a men group for that boy, and the mom and the boy show up. Not a lot of us, one or two of us, right? But then we start having some different conversation.
Okay, that's great. Does that also answer Virginia's question about a referral process? Is that the way it would work? She would call, Virginia Carmona asks in the chat, is there a referral process for a referral father? Is it just calling that number?
Yep.
Having a conversation with you? Could you drop that hotline number into the chat, Greg?
Yep.
So that we can pause it. And I just want to say that, like, as someone, I've been to the offices, I've gone to one of their training sessions. It's very approachable. Like it's professional, but there's also kind of an informality, just a relatability to the way these guys work. And so I would say, yeah, if you have someone who needs to be referred, it's about as I know these are like people dealing with like incredible trauma, but it's about as non-threatening an environment
Yeah.
you can look for to deal with that stuff.
Yeah, so one of the things, Patton, is when, Greg talked about these healing circles, we have them once a month. You can get the information online. You can also get it through that phone. You don't need an application process to come to a healing circle. You just show up at the door, and you're there. Very welcoming. The philosophy around the circle is there's nothing that you can never do that's so bad that you can't come back to this circle.
Yeah.
And non-judgmental, this is a circle of men who have gone through, experienced many other things, sexual abuse, prison, just everyday men, that they're there to support and just talk about the gifts, and their baggage.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you, guys. Okay, I want to, before we thank you guys, I want to make sure that we give Dacry a chance to explain the invitation to next Monday and the walking tour. So Dacry, get ready for that. But before we do that, I'm going to give you guys about 30 to 45 seconds to answer Dennis Compa's very deep question, which I'm sure you could spend.
Dennis. Let me tell you something real quick about Dennis.
Okay.
Was one of the reasons that this funding was brought into San Antonio in 2000.
Beautiful. Love that shout out. That doesn't surprise me at all, actually. Yeah.
How do we work with single moms to teach their boys how to be a man?
Yes, sir.
I think it's us having a conversation with mom, right? Because there's some things that we can do in creating that dialogue, and then we would, in a gentle way, we could invite mom to bring her son to one of our powwows, one of our bear dances. We're gonna have a powwow coming up. It's not a 5-minute thing. I think it's about creating a circle of support around this young man that is men, right? And it could be a brother and her family. It could be one of our compadres. It could be a couple others, right? But we want to start creating healthy role models so that this young boy can look at these men and say, that's what I'm going to be when I grow up.
Awesome.
Yeah. You can also just, come in and talk with us. If you look online, there's a video called the Bear Dancer, and it's about our work with young boys, and it's exactly that situation where a mother brought her sons to because she needed help, and so there's this video that's been done called the Bear Dancer that talks about what we do and how the work that we help with young moms. But it's not easy. I mean, the work that our hats are off to all the young mothers, all the mothers who've raised children on their own, for the decades, right? And it's tough. We know it's tough, and that's why that's why we're doing the work that we're doing, so we can help, so that we can get out there and help you.
Amen. Well, thank you guys. I appreciate both of you. I think San Antonio appreciates you, the work you guys are doing in this community, and thanks for being here and telling us about it today. I mentioned a couple times that I've had a couple months kind of thinking about these issues and talking to these guys, and it's because we were working on a story about AIT and the San Antonio Fatherhood Campaign for our magazine called Echoes. Marcus, if you could drop a link to Echoes in the chat, y'all can subscribe if you're not already subscribed. The story about their work is going to come out in the next couple of weeks. So keep an eye out for that, and that'll give you something else you can share to let people know about the important work that these guys are doing. And then Dacry, you want to say another word about next Monday and how to register?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's going to be a AIT walking tour on Monday, the 28th. It starts at 9 a.m. and we're going to meet at the San Jose Mission Center, at 9 a.m. And I actually have gone on one of the tours, and it's, as Pat mentioned, it's a phenomenal experience. So you're definitely going to make sure that you register for that. What I'm going to do is drop in the link in chat We will be wearing our mask and adhering to social distancing, but you don't have to. But we want to throw that out there to make sure that everybody feels safe and comfortable. I'm really excited about it, so make sure you register. And then also a couple of things is we have been doing Zoom polls, and what we would like to do is we just want to take a minute, not even a minute, I would say even 10 seconds, for you guys to just answer these quick questions for us. We are continuing to refine our program, and we want to make sure that if you have a chance to go ahead and answer those questions. Do you guys see the Zoom poll up there, everyone? Yeah, so if you could just, thanks for the thumbs up. Just go ahead and answer those for us. We'd love to get your thoughts about, to see if you've learned something new. And that's very helpful. So we are excited. Thank you again, Ramon. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Patton. That was powerful.